I paid for my daughter's entire wedding and gave her $40,000 for the honeymoon. On the day of the ceremony, her groom called me, "You will never be half the man I am. Stay away from our moment." The next day I received 34 calls from him and a message that made me laugh out loud. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. My name is Tyler, and I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like when my wife died 12 years ago. I was wrong. Nothing prepared me for the phone call I received on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life as a father. I was standing in my empty house, still in my wedding suit, the silence deafening after months of frantic preparation. Just 3 hours earlier, I had watched my daughter Lucy walk down the aisle in a dress that cost more than most people's cars. The wedding I had paid for with every penny I had saved, every sacrifice I had made, every dream I had postponed. $43,000. That was the total cost of Lucy's dream wedding. The venue alone was $15,000, the dress $4,000, the flowers $6,000, the photographer $5,000, the catering $13,000. I could recite every expense by heart because each one had required me to make another impossible choice. Sell my father's vintage watch, cash out my retirement fund early, and pay the penalties. Take a second mortgage on the house my wife and I had bought when Lucy was born. But seeing Lucy's face light up when she saw the venue for the first time made every sacrifice worth it, or so I thought. The phone rang as I was loosening my tie, my feet aching from standing for hours, greeting guests who barely acknowledged my presence. Most of them were Scott's family and friends, successful people who made me feel like the blue-collar mechanic I was. I had spent the entire reception watching my daughter from across the room, radiant in her happiness, while her new husband, Scott, commanded the attention of everyone around him. I almost didn't answer the phone. The caller ID showed Scott's name, and I figured he was calling to thank me, maybe to acknowledge, even briefly, what I had done to make their day perfect. I was tired, emotionally drained, but I picked up anyway. "Tyler?" His voice was cold, completely different from the polite tone he had used with me for the past year during wedding planning. "Scott, hey, how are you two doing? Getting ready for tomorrow's flight?" There was a pause, and then he laughed. Not a warm laugh. Something cruel and sharp that made my stomach tighten. "Let me tell you something, old man. You will never be half the man I am. You spent your pathetic life savings on a wedding just to feel important for one day, didn't you? Well, guess what? This is my wife now, my life now, and I don't need some washed-up mechanic trying to play daddy anymore. Stay away from our moment." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white, trying to process what I was hearing. "Scott, I don't understand. What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about you being exactly what you are. A nobody. Lucy married up, way up, and frankly, having you around is embarrassing." She agrees, by the way. "We both think it's better if you just step back, way back." I felt something break inside my chest. Not just hurt, but something deeper. The foundation of everything I thought I knew about my relationship with my daughter, about the years of sacrifice, about what today was supposed to mean. "Is Lucy there? Can I talk to her?" "Lucy is busy being happy with her husband. You know, the successful one who can actually provide for her without having to sell his dead father's belongings." The reference to my father's watch was like salt in an open wound. How did he know about that? I had never told anyone except Lucy when I needed to explain why I was short on money for the wedding preparations. She had hugged me, tears in her eyes, telling me she was grateful, but that I didn't have to sacrifice so much. Apparently, she had shared that private moment with Scott as something to mock. "Look, Scott, I think maybe you've been drinking. This isn't like you to... This is exactly like me. You just never saw it because you were so busy throwing money around, trying to buy your way into being the important father figure. Well, the money's spent now, and we don't need you anymore. Don't call us for a while. Actually, don't call us at all." The line went dead. I stood there in my living room, still holding the phone, my reflection staring back at me from the dark window. I looked old, worn out, like a man who had just given everything he had and been told it wasn't enough, that he wasn't enough. I sank into my armchair, the same one where I used to read bedtime stories to Lucy when she was little. The same chair where I had sat countless nights after my wife died, wondering how I was going to raise a daughter alone. I had worked double shifts, missed social events, turned down opportunities that would have taken me away from home, all to make sure Lucy had everything she needed. Not just needed, but wanted. When she graduated high school and wanted to go to an expensive private college, I took out loans. When she needed a car, I bought her one while continuing to drive my 15-year-old truck. When she moved into her first apartment, I furnished it. When she started dating Scott and mentioned how impressed she was by his family's wealth, I made sure she never felt embarrassed about her background. I upgraded everything I could afford to upgrade, borrowed money I couldn't afford to borrow, all so she could hold her head high in their world. And now, apparently, I was an embarrassment. I thought about calling Lucy directly, but something stopped me. If what Scott said was true, if she really felt the same way, then hearing it from her would destroy what was left of my heart. If it wasn't true, if Scott was lying or speaking out of turn, then calling would force her to choose between her new husband and her father on their wedding night. I couldn't do that to her. Instead, I sat in that chair and replayed every moment of the wedding, looking for signs I had missed. The way Lucy had barely spent any time with me during the reception, how she had introduced me to people as my dad with no elaboration, while Scott's father was introduced as the district attorney or the man who owns half the commercial real estate downtown. How during the father-daughter dance, she had seemed distracted going through the motions. I had attributed it all to wedding day nerves, to a young woman overwhelmed by the magnitude of the day. Now I wondered if it was something else entirely. Shame, impatience, a daughter waiting for her father to fade into the background so she could fully embrace her new elevated life. The house felt impossibly quiet. For months it had been filled with wedding preparations, with Lucy stopping by to show me color swatches and menu options, asking my opinion on things I knew nothing about but pretending to care about because they mattered to her. Now, with the wedding over and my usefulness apparently expired, the silence was suffocating. I pulled out my bank statements, spread them across the coffee table, and stared at the numbers. My checking account, $632. My savings account, $0. My retirement fund, whatever small amount remained after the early withdrawal penalties. The second mortgage payment would be due in 3 weeks, and I had no idea how I was going to make it. But the money wasn't what hurt the most. It was the realization that everything I had believed about my relationship with Lucy might have been an illusion. That the grateful hugs, the tears of appreciation, the "Dad, I don't know what I'd do without you," might have been performances. That I had been so desperate to be needed, to be the good father, that I had confused financial dependency with love. I went to bed that night still in my wedding suit, too exhausted and heartsick to change clothes. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was what my life would be now. Alone, broke, and forgotten by the one person I had lived for since the day she was born. I had no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours, my phone would start ringing, and the man who had humiliated me would be begging for my help. I woke up the next morning to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. The first call came at 6:47 in the morning. I rolled over, still wearing my wrinkled wedding suit from the night before, and saw Scott's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again and again. By 7:15, I had received 8 calls from Scott and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize. Each voicemail was the same panicked voice, the same desperate tone, completely different from the cruel man who had destroyed me the night before. "Tyler, pick up, please. Something's happened. I need to talk to you." "Tyler, this is urgent. Lucy, there's been a situation. Call me back immediately." "Tyler, I know you're angry, but this is about Lucy. She needs help. Please call me." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the phone as it rang for the 15th time. Part of me wanted to throw it against the wall, to never hear Scott's voice again. But the mention of Lucy needing help made my stomach clench with worry. Whatever Scott had done to humiliate me, Lucy was still my daughter. Finally, on the 18th call, I answered, "What do you want, Scott?" "Tyler, thank God. Listen, I know last night got out of hand, but we have a real problem here. Lucy found something on my phone. Some messages. She's not taking it well. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar weight settle in my chest. What kind of messages? There was a pause, and I could hear him breathing heavily, like he'd been running or crying, maybe both. Look, it's not what she thinks. There were some conversations with women from work, maybe some flirting, but nothing serious, nothing physical. But Lucy, she's acting like I cheated or something. She locked herself in the bathroom of the hotel room and won't come out. She won't talk to me. She's talking about annulment. Annulment? The word came out sharper than I intended. Scott, you've been married for 12 hours. I know. That's why I need your help. You're the only one she listens to. You need to call her and tell her she's overreacting. Tell her that marriages go through rough patches and that she can't just run away at the first sign of trouble. I stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, my neighbor was watering his garden, starting another peaceful Sunday morning. Inside my house, I was apparently expected to clean up another mess for my daughter and her husband. What exactly did these messages say, Scott? Another pause. Longer this time. They were inappropriate. But, Tyler, you have to understand, I was stressed about the wedding, about the pressure. Sometimes men say things they don't mean when they're under pressure. Inappropriate how? Does it matter? The point is, Lucy is overreacting. She's always been dramatic. You know that better than anyone. She gets upset and makes these grand gestures. Remember when she threatened to drop out of college because she failed one test? You talked sense into her then. I need you to do it again. Led. The casual way he dismissed Lucy's feelings, the assumption that I would automatically side with him, the complete absence of accountability for whatever he had done, it all crystallized something inside me. This wasn't a man who had made a mistake and was genuinely sorry. This was a man who was angry about being caught. Scott, if Lucy found messages that upset her on your phone, maybe the problem isn't that she's being dramatic. Maybe the problem is that you were sending them in the first place. Tyler, don't lecture me about marriage. You were married to one woman for what, 8 years? And then she died. I'm trying to build a life with Lucy that lasts forever. Sometimes that requires flexibility. The mention of my wife, the casual dismissal of our marriage, the implication that her death somehow made me less qualified to understand relationships, it was like being slapped. But something interesting happened in that moment. Instead of the crushing pain I had felt the night before, I felt something else. Clarity. Flexibility, I repeated slowly. Is that what you call it? Look, can we focus on the real problem here? Lucy is threatening to come home, to move back in with you. Is that what you want? Your 32-year-old daughter moving back into your house because she can't handle being married for one day? The question was clearly meant to manipulate me, to make me see Lucy's potential return as a burden rather than a blessing. But all I could think about was how much I missed having her around, how empty the house had felt since she moved in with Scott 6 months ago, how I would actually love nothing more than to have my daughter back home where I could make sure she was safe and valued. Maybe that's exactly what she needs to do, I said quietly. What? No, Tyler, you're not listening. I need you to call her and convince her to work this out with me, to be reasonable, to remember that she just married someone who can give her everything she wants in life. Everything except respect, apparently. Tyler, don't be dramatic. This is about some text messages, some harmless flirting. Lucy knew what she was getting when she married me. She knew I was a social person, that I have relationships with women in my professional life. She can't expect me to become a monk just because we're married. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, staring at the small stack of wedding photos Lucy had left on my counter the week before. Pictures from her engagement session, her bridal shower, her bachelorette party. In every photo she was smiling, but looking at them now, I could see something I had missed before. The smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Scott, let me ask you something. If these messages were so harmless, why didn't you tell Lucy about them yourself? Because she wouldn't understand the context. She would overreact, which is exactly what she's doing now. Look, Tyler, I'm trying to save my marriage here. Our marriage. And I need your help to do it. What makes you think Lucy will listen to me? According to you, I'm just some embarrassing old man she wants to stay away from. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Scott spoke, his voice smaller, more desperate. I may have said some things last night that I didn't mean. I was drunk, overwhelmed. It was a big day, you know. I wasn't thinking clearly. Which things didn't you mean, Scott? The part where you said I'd never be half the man you are? Or the part where you said Lucy was embarrassed by me? All of it, none of it. Look, Tyler, I was out of line, okay? I'm sorry. But right now, I need to focus on fixing things with Lucy, and she respects you. She loves you. If you tell her to give me another chance, she will. I thought about all the times over the years when Lucy had called me in tears about some crisis or another, failed tests, broken friendships, job rejections, relationship problems. I had always dropped everything to help her, to offer advice, to fix whatever could be fixed. I had seen it as being a good father. Now I wondered if I had actually been enabling her to avoid dealing with the consequences of her own choices. How many other women were you messaging, Scott? It doesn't matter. What matters is that Lucy is talking about leaving me, and I can't let that happen. Do you know what this would do to my reputation, to my career, to my family's standing in the community? And there it was, not concern for Lucy's feelings, not genuine remorse for betraying her trust, just worry about how his reputation would suffer if word got out that his bride had left him after one day of marriage. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to message other women. Tyler, please, I'm begging you here. Call Lucy. Tell her that every marriage has problems. Tell her that walking away is not the solution. Tell her that she made a commitment and she needs to honor it. I closed my eyes, thinking about the $43,000 I had spent, the sacrifices I had made, the dreams I had postponed, all for a wedding that was apparently falling apart before the honeymoon even began. I thought about Lucy, locked in a bathroom, crying and confused and feeling betrayed by the man she had promised to love forever. And for the first time since the phone started ringing, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Scott, I'm going to call Lucy, but not to tell her what you want me to tell her. What do you mean? I'm going to tell her to come home, and I'm going to tell her that she deserves better than a man who calls her father to clean up his messes instead of taking responsibility for his own actions. The phone went silent again. When Scott spoke, his voice was cold, dangerous, more like the man who had called me the night before. If you do that, Tyler, you'll regret it. I have connections, influence. I can make life very difficult for a small-time mechanic who doesn't know his place. I hung up the phone and immediately dialed Lucy's number. It was time for my daughter to come home. Lucy answered on the first ring, and the sound of her crying made my chest tighten immediately. For 32 years, that sound had been my signal to drop everything and fix whatever was wrong. This time felt different, heavier, like something that couldn't be solved with a hug and a promise that everything would be okay. Dad? Her voice was small, broken, nothing like the radiant bride I had watched walk down the aisle just 24 hours earlier. Hey, sweetheart, I'm here. Tell me what's happening. I heard her take a shaky breath, trying to compose herself enough to speak. Did Scott call you? Did he ask you to convince me to go back to him? The question caught me off guard. Not because Scott had called, but because Lucy seemed to expect it, like she knew that Scott would run to me the moment their marriage hit trouble and that I would automatically take his side. He called, but I'm not calling to convince you of anything, Lucy. I'm calling to ask what you need. She was quiet for so long, I thought the connection had dropped. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I found messages on his phone, Dad, not just one or two, dozens of them, with different women, some from work, some from dating apps that he apparently never deleted. Some of them, she paused, and I could hear her crying again. Some of them are from last week, while we were doing final fittings for the wedding dress. My hands clenched around the phone. Lucy, I'm so sorry. The worst part isn't even what he said to them, it's what he said about me, about us, about our family. Her voice cracked completely. He told one woman that he was marrying some mechanic's daughter for stability, but that he wasn't planning to change his lifestyle. He said I was naive and desperate and that I would never question him because I was so grateful to be marrying up. Each word felt like a knife twisting in my gut, not just because of what Scott had said about Lucy, but because of what it revealed about how he saw me, saw us, saw the entire wedding I had bankrupted myself to pay for. Dad, there's more. He wrote about the wedding, about how he couldn't believe how much money you spent trying to impress his family. He said you were pathetic, trying to buy your way into respectability. He made jokes about your clothes, about your truck, about how you didn't belong at the country club reception. I closed my eyes, leaning against the kitchen counter for support. The humiliation was overwhelming, but underneath it was something else. Rage. Pure, clean rage at a man who had taken my daughter's love, my money, and my dignity, and turned them all into jokes for his entertainment. Lucy, where are you right now? I'm at the airport. I left Scott at the hotel. I can't be around him right now. I was going to fly home, but then I thought about facing everyone, about explaining why I'm back after one day of marriage, and she broke down completely. Come home, sweetheart. Come home right now. Dad, I can't. I'm so embarrassed, so ashamed. Everyone will know that I failed at marriage in less than 24 hours. They'll know that Scott didn't really love me. They'll think I'm pathetic. Lucy, listen to me very carefully. You are not pathetic. You are not a failure. You found out that your husband was lying to you and betraying you, and you had the strength to walk away. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you brave. But Dad, all the money you spent, the wedding, the honeymoon fund, $40,000 that you didn't have. I know you took out a second mortgage. I know you sold Grandpa's watch. You sacrificed everything for this wedding, and now it's all for nothing. There it was. The real reason she was afraid to come home. Not just embarrassment about the failed marriage, but guilt about the money. The crushing weight of knowing that her father had given everything he had for a dream that had turned into a nightmare. Lucy, do you want to know what would be for nothing if you stayed married to a man who doesn't love you, doesn't respect you, and sees you as something he settled for? That would make every penny I spent meaningless. The money doesn't matter. It does matter, Dad. You're 63 years old. You should be thinking about retirement, about taking care of yourself. Instead, you're working overtime to pay for my mistakes. Your mistakes? I could feel my voice rising. Lucy, marrying someone who lied to you isn't your mistake. Trusting someone who manipulated you isn't your mistake. The only mistake here was made by Scott, and maybe by me, for not seeing who he really was. He was quiet again, and I could hear the sounds of the airport around her. Announcements echoing through terminals, the rolling of luggage wheels, the buzz of travelers moving through their lives, while my daughter sat alone, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces of hers. Dad, can I ask you something, and will you tell me the truth? Always. Did you ever like Scott? Really like him? Or were you just being supportive because I loved him? I thought about the question carefully. Over the past year, as Lucy and Scott had gotten serious, I had tried to get to know him. I had invited him to dinner, tried to find common ground, attempted to build the kind of relationship I hoped to have with my future son-in-law. Looking back now, I could see all the signs I had missed or ignored. The way Scott never asked me about myself, never seemed genuinely interested in my life or my work. How he would check his phone constantly during our conversations like he was bored or waiting for something more important. The subtle condescension when he talked about my job, my house, my lifestyle. The way he would make jokes about blue-collar work that weren't quite cruel enough to call him out on, but weren't quite innocent either. Honestly, Lucy, I always felt like Scott was performing when he was around me, like he was playing the role of the respectful boyfriend who appreciated your family, but it never felt genuine. I told myself I was being overprotective, that no man would ever be good enough for my daughter. But now I think I was picking up on something real. Then why didn't you say anything? It was my turn to be quiet. Why hadn't I said anything? Why had I gone along with the wedding planning, spent money I couldn't afford, smiled and nodded through all the preparations when something in my gut was telling me that Scott wasn't right for Lucy? Because I was afraid that if I spoke up, you would choose him over me. I was afraid that if I tried to interfere, you would cut me out of your life to prove your independence. I was afraid that if I said I didn't trust your judgment, you would stop trusting me. Dad, I would never choose anyone over you. Ever. The simple statement hit me like a physical blow. Here was my daughter, calling me from an airport after discovering that her brand new husband had been planning to betray her from the beginning. And she was worried about my feelings. She was afraid to come home because she thought she had wasted my money. She was ashamed of her own victimization instead of angry at the man who had victimized her. Lucy, I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. Everything Scott said about me, everything he wrote about our family, it doesn't hurt because it's true. It hurts because I spent so much time and energy trying to prove to people like him that I was good enough, that we were good enough, that I forgot we already were. Wait, what do you mean? I mean, I spent $43,000 on a wedding because I wanted Scott's family to respect us. I wanted them to see that, even though I'm just a mechanic, I could give my daughter the same kind of wedding their son would get. I was so focused on proving our worth to them that I forgot the only person whose opinion actually matters is you. Dad, you didn't have to prove anything to anyone. I know that now. But for the past year, I've been so worried about not being good enough for your new life that I lost sight of something important. You chose to love me long before you chose to love Scott. You chose to value our relationship, to include me in your decisions, to make me a part of your future. That's not something I had to buy. That's something I earned by being your father. I heard her crying again, but this time it sounded different. Not the desperate sobs of earlier, but something quieter, more relieved. I want to come home, Dad. I want to come home and figure out what happens next. Then come home. We'll figure it out together. What about Scott? He's going to keep calling. He's going to try to convince me to go back. He might even come to the house. I thought about Scott's threat on the phone, his promise to make my life difficult if I didn't help him get Lucy back. I thought about his connections, his influence, his family standing in the community. And then I thought about my daughter, sitting alone in an airport, afraid to face the world because the man who was supposed to protect her had betrayed her instead. Let him come, I said quietly. Let him call. Let him do whatever he thinks will work. Because I'm done being intimidated by people who think money and status make them better than us. And Lucy, I'm done protecting you from the consequences of other people's choices. It's time for you to see what you're really worth, and it's time for Scott to find out what happens when he messes with my family. Dad, what are you going to do? I looked around my kitchen, at the wedding photos still scattered on the counter, at the bills stacked neatly beside them, at the evidence of everything I had given up to make Lucy's dream wedding possible. And for the first time since Scott's cruel phone call the night before, I smiled. I'm going to teach you something I should have taught you a long time ago, sweetheart. I'm going to show you that the people who truly love you don't need you to be grateful. They don't need you to be perfect. And they sure as hell don't need you to settle for less than you deserve. Lucy came home that evening, walking through the front door with the same small suitcase she had packed for her honeymoon. She looked exhausted, older somehow, like the past 24 hours had aged her in ways that years of normal living couldn't. But there was something else in her eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. A clarity that had been missing during all the wedding planning, all the stress of trying to fit into Scott's world. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where we had planned her wedding budget, where we had addressed invitations, where we had discussed everything except the doubts that had been growing in both our hearts. Dad, I need to tell you something else about Scott. Something I should have told you months ago. I waited, hands folded on the table, giving her space to find the words. The messages weren't the only thing I found on his phone. There were financial records too. Screenshots of bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds. He had been researching you, Dad, researching our family's finances. My blood went cold. What do you mean researching? He knew exactly how much money you had in savings before we even got engaged. He knew about Mom's life insurance policy, about the equity in this house, about your retirement account. He had it all written down in a notes app on his phone, like he was keeping track of assets. I stared at her, trying to process what she was telling me. Lucy, how long had he been doing this? Based on the dates on the screenshots? Since about 3 months after we started dating seriously. Dad, I think he targeted me because he thought our family had more money than we actually do. The pieces started falling into place. Scott's sudden interest in Lucy after what she had described as a lukewarm start to their relationship. His enthusiasm for an expensive wedding when Lucy had initially wanted something simple. His insistence that I, as the father of the bride, should pay for everything according to tradition, even when that tradition would clearly strain my finances. He thought the life insurance from Mom was more substantial than it was, Lucy continued, her voice getting smaller. He thought you owned the auto shop where you work instead of just being employed there. He thought this house was paid off instead of still having a mortgage. How do you know all this? Because he wrote it all down, like a business plan. He had calculations about how much money would potentially be available for investments, for upgrading our lifestyle, for his business ventures. Dad, he was counting on our family's financial support as part of his long-term planning. I felt sick to my stomach, not just from the betrayal, but from the realization of how completely I had been manipulated. Every conversation Scott had initiated about the wedding budget, every suggestion for upgrades and additions, every comment about how important it was to make a good impression on his family, it had all been calculated. He had known I would stretch myself financially because he had researched exactly how far I could be stretched. "There's more," Lucy said quietly. In some of his messages to other women, he talked about his marriage as a business arrangement. He said I was investment potential and that once he had access to family assets, he could start taking the financial risks he wanted to take with his career. What kind of risks? Leaving his corporate job to start his own consulting firm, buying rental properties, making aggressive stock investments, all with money he expected to get from you, from us. Dad, I don't think he ever loved me. I think he saw me as a pathway to funding the lifestyle he wanted. I stood up from the table, pacing to the window, my hands shaking with anger. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into a peaceful Sunday evening. Inside my kitchen, I was learning that my daughter's marriage had been a financial scam from the very beginning. "Lucy, when did you first realize something was wrong?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her hands. "I think I always knew, on some level. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was sabotaging my own happiness because I was afraid of commitment. Every time something felt off, I made excuses for it." "What kind of things?" "The way he would steer conversations toward money, how he always wanted to know details about your work, about the house, about our family's financial situation, how he would get irritated when you drove your old truck to meet us for dinner instead of something newer, how he would make jokes about blue-collar workers that felt like he was testing to see if I would defend you or laugh along. And what did you do when he made those jokes?" Lucy's face crumpled. "I laughed along, Dad. I was so desperate to fit into his world, so afraid he would realize I wasn't sophisticated enough for him, that I let him make fun of you. I let him make fun of our family, our life, everything you worked so hard to give me." The admission hung in the air between us. I could see the shame and guilt eating at her, but I also understood something that maybe she didn't yet. Lucy hadn't betrayed me by laughing at Scott's jokes. She had betrayed herself by pretending to be someone she wasn't, to keep a man who was never worthy of her in the first place. "Lucy, can I ask you something? And I want you to be completely honest." She nodded. "Did you want to marry Scott, or did you want to marry the life you thought he could give you?" She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I wanted to not be Tyler the mechanic's daughter anymore. I wanted to be somebody important, somebody respectable. I wanted to live in a nice house and join the right clubs and never worry about money. I wanted to be the kind of woman who belonged in Scott's world. And did you think I wasn't good enough to be part of that world?" "No, Dad, that's not..." She stopped, reconsidering. Maybe I was afraid that if Scott's family really got to know us, they would see that we didn't belong, that you didn't belong, and then Scott would realize he had made a mistake." I sat back down at the table, reaching across to take her hands. "Lucy, let me tell you what I see when I look at our life. I see a man who worked 2 jobs to send his daughter to college without debt. I see a family that owns their home, pays their bills, and takes care of each other. I see a father who taught his daughter to be independent, to work hard, and to value substance over appearance. I see people who have nothing to be ashamed of. But Dad, we're not rich. We're not powerful. We don't have connections or influence or any of the things that make people important." According to who? According to Scott? According to his family? "Lucy, the only reason you started thinking we weren't good enough is because you fell in love with someone who convinced you that love wasn't enough, that you needed to upgrade yourself to deserve happiness. She was crying openly now, but nodding like she was finally hearing something she needed to hear. I have been thinking about this all afternoon, I continued, and I've made some decisions, big ones. And I need you to understand what I'm about to do because it's going to affect both of us. Lucy looked up, wiping her eyes. What do you mean? I mean I'm done. I'm done trying to prove that we're good enough for people who will never think we are. I'm done spending money I don't have to impress people who don't respect me anyway. I'm done sacrificing my future to fund other people's dreams. Dad, what are you saying? I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to say would change everything between us, but also knowing that it was long overdue. I'm saying that for the first time in your adult life, you're going to have to figure out your problems without me writing a check to make them go away. I'm saying that I'm not going to pay for your divorce lawyer or help you move into a new apartment or cover your living expenses while you get back on your feet. I'm saying that you're 32 years old, and it's time for you to learn that your worth isn't determined by how much money I can spend on you. Lucy stared at me, shocked. Dad, I don't understand. Are you punishing me? No, sweetheart, I'm not punishing you. I'm freeing you, and I'm freeing myself. For years, I have been so afraid of you struggling, so terrified of you being disappointed or unhappy, that I have prevented you from learning how to solve your own problems. I have made you dependent on me instead of helping you become independent. But I don't know how to handle this alone. The divorce, the money Scott spent on the honeymoon, the deposits that won't be refunded, the embarrassment of telling everyone what happened. Then you'll figure it out. The same way I figured out how to raise a daughter alone when your mother died. The same way I figured out how to pay for your college, your car, your apartment, and your wedding. You'll figure it out because you have to, and because you're stronger than you think you are. Lucy looked panicked. Dad, please don't abandon me. Not now. I need you. I'm not abandoning you, Lucy. I'm still your father. I still love you more than life itself. But I'm not your bank anymore. I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not the person who swoops in to fix everything when your choices don't work out the way you hoped. Tim, so what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to live? How am I supposed to pay for everything? You're going to get a job. You're going to find an apartment you can afford. You're going to handle your own divorce proceedings. You're going to face the embarrassment and the gossip and the judgment, and you're going to survive it. Because that's what adults do. And what about Scott? What if he keeps calling? What if he tries to pressure me to come back? I smiled, feeling something settle into place inside my chest. Something hard and determined, and completely unlike the people-pleasing man I had been for the past year. Scott is going to discover that neither of us is available to clean up his messes anymore, and if he wants to keep playing games, he's going to learn that some people are much better at them than he is. 3 days after Lucy moved back home, Scott showed up at my front door. I had been expecting it, but I hadn't expected him to look quite so desperate. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his eyes had the hollow look of a man who hadn't been sleeping well. I opened the door slowly, making no move to invite him inside. Scott, Tyler, thank God, we need to talk. This whole situation has gotten completely out of hand, and I think we can work something out that benefits everyone. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. I'm listening. Look, I know Lucy is upset, and she has every right to be. I made some mistakes. I said some things I shouldn't have said, did some things I shouldn't have done. But Tyler, you have to understand, I love your daughter. I want to make this work. Interesting. Because the messages Lucy found on your phone suggest otherwise. His face flushed red, but he pressed on. Those messages were taken out of context. Yes, I was talking to other women, but it wasn't serious. It was just guy talk. Blowing off steam before the wedding. You know how it is. Actually, I don't know how it is. When I was engaged to Lucy's mother, I didn't feel the need to blow off steam by flirting with other women. Scott's jaw tightened. That was a different time, Tyler. Relationships are more complicated now, more casual. Lucy knew I wasn't a monk when she met me. She knew I was a social person. Social? I repeated flatly. Is that what you call researching my family's finances and planning how to spend our money? The color drained from his face. He told you about that? He told me everything, Scott. About the bank statements you screenshotted, about the investment plans you made, using money you assumed you'd get from us, about how you described Lucy as investment potential to your other women. He ran a hand through his hair, his composure finally cracking. Tyler, you don't understand the pressure I was under. My family, my career, the expectations. I needed to know that Lucy's family could support the lifestyle we were planning to build together. No, Scott. You needed to know if we had money you could steal. It wasn't stealing. His voice rose. Then he caught himself glancing nervously at the neighbors' houses. It was planning. It was being responsible about our future. Lucy was going to benefit from those investments, too. Lucy was going to benefit from you lying to her and using her to get access to money that doesn't exist. The money does exist, Tyler. Maybe not in the amounts I initially calculated, but there's still value here. This house, your retirement account, Lucy's earning potential. If we all work together, if we pool our resources, we can build something bigger than any of us could achieve alone. I stared at him, amazed by his audacity. Even now, even after being caught red-handed, he was still trying to manipulate me into giving him money, still trying to frame his betrayal as some kind of business opportunity. Scott, let me be very clear about something. There is no we. There is no pooling of resources. There is no working together. Lucy is divorcing you, and neither of us owes you a single penny. His expression hardened. Tyler, I don't think you understand what you're dealing with here. I have connections in this city, influential people who can make life very difficult for a small-time mechanic who doesn't know his place. There it is, I said quietly, the real Scott. Not the charming young man who convinced my daughter to marry him, but the entitled brat who threatens people when he doesn't get his way. I'm not threatening you, Tyler. I'm explaining reality. You think you can just walk away from this? You think there won't be consequences for interfering in my marriage? I stepped forward, closing the distance between us until we were face to face. Scott, let me explain a different reality. You have no power over me. You have no influence that matters to me. You have no way to hurt me that could possibly be worse than watching you destroy my daughter's happiness. Tyler, you're making a mistake, a big one. If you don't convince Lucy to come back, if you don't help me fix this marriage, I will ruin you. I will make sure everyone in this town knows what kind of father you really are. How you raised a daughter who can't commit to anything, who runs home to daddy the moment adult life gets complicated. I smiled, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me. Go ahead, Scott. Tell everyone. Tell them that Lucy had the strength to walk away from a man who was betraying her. Tell them that when she needed help, her father was there for her. Tell them that we value honesty and respect more than money and status. I'm not ashamed of any of that. Scott's face twisted with rage. You pathetic old man. You think you're protecting Lucy, but you're destroying her future. I could have given her everything. A beautiful house, financial security, social standing. And you're going to let her throw it all away to move back into this dump with her loser father. This dump, I said evenly, is where Lucy learned that love doesn't come with conditions. That respect isn't something you have to buy. That family means showing up when things get hard, not just when they're convenient. If you think that makes us losers, then we're proud to be losers. Scott stepped back, breathing heavily. This isn't over, Tyler. Lucy will realize what she's giving up. She'll come crawling back, and when she does, I might not be so generous with my forgiveness. Scott, let me save you some time and disappointment. Lucy isn't coming back. Not because I'm preventing her, but because you showed her who you really are. And the woman I raised is smart enough to know that a man who lies, cheats, and threatens isn't worth her time, no matter how much money he has. She's making the biggest mistake of her life. No, Scott. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of her life. Leaving you is the smartest thing she's ever done. He stood there for a moment longer, looking like a child who had just been told no for the first time in his life. Then he turned and walked back to his BMW, but not before delivering one final threat. You'll regret this, Tyler. Both of you will. I watched him drive away, then went inside and locked the door. Lucy was sitting at the kitchen table, looking pale and shaken. I heard everything, she said quietly. Dad, what if he really can hurt you? What if he makes good on his threats? I sat down across from her, taking her hands in mine. Lucy, do you remember when you were little? And you used to have nightmares? You would wake up crying, convinced that the monsters in your dreams were real and that they could hurt you? She nodded. And do you remember what I used to tell you? That monsters only have power over you if you believe in them. That's right. Scott thinks he's powerful because he has money and connections and a fancy job. But real power, Lucy, real strength, comes from knowing who you are and being comfortable with that person. Scott has to threaten people and manipulate them because deep down he knows he's not worth much without his external advantages. But you and I, we know we're worth something just because of who we are. But what if he tries to hurt your job? What if he really does have influence? I squeezed her hands. Then we'll deal with it, together. But Lucy, I need you to understand something important. I'm not afraid of Scott anymore. I'm not afraid of losing my job or having people talk about us or facing whatever consequences come from standing up to him. Do you know why? She shook her head. Because for the first time in years, I'm proud of the choices I'm making. I'm proud that my daughter had the courage to walk away from a bad situation. I'm proud that our family values mean more to us than money or status. I'm proud that when Scott showed his true colors, neither of us was willing to pretend we didn't see them. Lucy was crying, but this time they looked like tears of relief rather than fear. Dad, I'm scared about starting over, about being divorced before I'm even 33, about people judging me, thinking I'm a failure. Lucy, let me tell you what failure really looks like. Failure is staying married to someone who doesn't love you because you're afraid of what people will think. Failure is pretending to be someone you're not to keep a man who isn't worth keeping. Failure is sacrificing your self-respect for the illusion of security. So what do I do now? Now you figure out who you are when you're not trying to impress anyone. You discover what you actually want, not what you think you should want. You learn that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel small. She nodded slowly. Will you help me? I'll support you, Lucy. I'll love you unconditionally. I'll be here when you need advice or encouragement. But I won't do the work for you. I won't solve your problems or make your decisions or shield you from the natural consequences of life, because the woman I raised is capable of handling her own life, and it's time for both of us to remember that. That night, after Lucy had gone to bed, I sat on my front porch with a beer, looking out at the quiet street where I had lived for 22 years. Scott's threats echoed in my mind, but they didn't frighten me. If anything, they made me feel more determined than ever to show Lucy what real strength looked like. Tomorrow, I would go to work, as usual. I would do my job well, treat my co-workers with respect, and take pride in the skills I had spent decades developing. If Scott wanted to try to take that away from me, he was welcome to try. But he was going to discover that some things, the most important things, couldn't be bought or sold or threatened away. And Lucy was going to discover that the life we had built together, the values we shared, the love that held us together, was worth more than anything Scott had ever offered. 6 months later, I was working under the hood of a 1998 Honda Civic when my boss, Frank, called me into his office. My stomach tightened instinctively. After Scott's threats, I had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some way that his influence might finally reach me at work. Tyler, sit down, Frank said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. We need to talk. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and sat down, preparing myself for whatever Scott had managed to orchestrate. I just got off the phone with Jim Patterson. You know Jim, owns the big dealership downtown. I nodded, wondering where this was going. Well, Jim's looking for someone to run his service department, someone with experience, someone his customers trust, someone who knows how to manage a team. He asked me if I knew anyone, and Tyler, I immediately thought of you. I blinked, not sure I had heard correctly. Frank, what are you saying? I'm saying Jim is offering you a job, service manager position. Salary instead of hourly, full benefits, profit sharing, the whole package. It's a big step up, Tyler. The kind of opportunity most mechanics dream about. I stared at him, my mind spinning. Frank, I don't understand. Why would Jim Patterson want me? I've never even met the man. Frank leaned back in his chair, smiling. That's the interesting part. Apparently Jim's been hearing your name around town for months. Customers talking about the mechanic who fixed their car right the first time, who didn't overcharge them, who treated them with respect, Word gets around in this business, Tyler. Good mechanics are hard to find and honest ones are even rarer. But I haven't been looking for a new job. I like working here. I know you do, and I hate to lose you. But Tyler, this is a chance for you to build something bigger. To use all that knowledge you've accumulated over the years. To finally get the recognition you deserve. I thought about Scott's threats, about his promise to use his influence to hurt me. Apparently, while he had been plotting my downfall, my reputation had been building itself through the simple act of doing good work and treating people fairly. Can I think about it? Of course. But don't think too long. Jim wants to meet with you this week if you're interested. I went home that evening with my head still spinning. Lucy was in the kitchen cooking dinner, something she had started doing regularly since moving back home. Not because I expected it, but because she said it helped her feel useful while she figured out her next steps. Dad, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong? I told her about the job offer, about Frank's conversation, about the opportunities that apparently existed that I had never even considered. Dad, that's amazing. Why do you look so worried? Because I keep waiting for the catch, for the way that Scott's threats are finally going to materialize. This seems too good to be true. Lucy set down her spatula and turned to face me. Dad, has it occurred to you that maybe this has nothing to do with Scott? That maybe you've earned this opportunity through 30 years of hard work and integrity? I hadn't considered that. For months, I had been so focused on protecting myself and Lucy from Scott's influence that I had forgotten that I had my own reputation, my own relationships, my own value, that existed completely independent of his opinion of me. You know what I think, Lucy continued. I think Scott was so busy trying to tear you down that he forgot you were already building something up. All those years of treating customers fairly, of doing honest work, of being someone people could trust. That doesn't just disappear because some entitled jerk decides he doesn't like you. Lucy, what if I take this job and Scott finds a way to sabotage it? What if his family's connections reach that far? She walked over and sat down across from me at the table. Then we'll deal with it. But Dad, you can't spend your whole life afraid of what Scott might do. He's not nearly as powerful as he thinks he is, and even if he was, that's no reason to turn down opportunities you've earned. 3 days later, I met with Jim Patterson. He was a straight-talking man in his 60s, someone who had built his dealership from nothing and understood the value of people who took pride in their work. Tyler, I'm not going to beat around the bush, Jim said as we sat in his office overlooking the service bay. I need someone who can run my service department like their own business. Someone who understands that repeat customers are worth more than quick profits. Someone who can train younger mechanics, not just to fix cars, but to treat people right. Mr. Patterson, can I ask how you heard about me? Jim smiled. Tyler, in this business, reputation is everything. I've had at least a dozen customers over the past year tell me they wish all mechanics were like Tyler from Frank's shop. That's not advertising. You can buy. What happened to your current service manager? Retirement? And between you and me, he'd been coasting for the past few years. My service department has gotten a reputation for overcharging and under-delivering. I need someone to turn that around, to make my customers trust us again. We talked for another hour about the job responsibilities, the salary, the benefits package. Everything Jim described sounded like a dream I had never dared to have. Financial security, respect, the opportunity to build something lasting. Tyler, I'll be honest with you. This job comes with challenges. You'll be dealing with customers who've been burned before, mechanics who are set in their ways, and the constant pressure to balance profitability with honesty. Are you up for that? I thought about everything I had learned over the past 6 months, about standing up to Scott, about setting boundaries with Lucy, about the difference between being respected and being liked. Mr. Patterson, I've spent the last 30 years learning how to fix things that are broken. I think I'm ready to try fixing something bigger. He smiled and extended his hand. When can you start? That evening, Lucy and I celebrated with takeout Chinese food and cheap wine. As we sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the comfortable familiarity of our small house, Lucy raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said. To new beginnings, I echoed. clinking my glass against hers. "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Always." 6 months ago, I was so ashamed of who we were. I thought we needed to be different, better, more impressive. But watching you these past months, seeing how you handled Scott, how you handled me, how you handled all of it with such dignity, I realize I had it backwards." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Scott was the one who should have been trying to impress us. He was the one who should have been grateful to be part of our family. We didn't need to change to deserve him. He needed to change to deserve us." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "Lucy, you've grown up a lot these past 6 months. I had to. You stopped protecting me from reality, and reality turned out to be a lot less scary than I thought it would be. And how are you doing?" "Really doing?" Lucy smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes completely. "I'm doing great, Dad. I got a job I actually like instead of one that just sounded impressive. I'm living within my means instead of trying to keep up with people I don't even respect. I'm dating someone who thinks having a mechanic for a father-in-law would be pretty cool. And most importantly, I'm not afraid anymore." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of being myself. Afraid of people not liking me. Afraid of not being good enough. I spent so much energy trying to be someone I thought other people would approve of that I forgot to figure out who I actually was." "And who are you, Lucy?" She grinned. "I'm Tyler's daughter, and I'm proud of that." 3 months later, Scott's BMW broke down on the interstate. By pure coincidence, the tow truck brought it to Patterson Automotive, where I was now the service manager. I was reviewing work orders when I saw his name on the schedule. Part of me wanted to assign his car to one of the other mechanics, to avoid the confrontation entirely. But a bigger part of me was curious to see how he would handle finding me in a position of authority at the dealership his family had probably been using for years. Scott walked into the service bay looking every bit as arrogant as he had 6 months earlier, but when he saw me, his face went white. "Tyler? What are you doing here?" "I work here, Scott. I'm the service manager." "I understand you're having some trouble with your car." He looked around nervously, as if he expected someone to rescue him from the situation. Yes." The engine light came on, and it started making noise on the highway. "Well, let's take a look and see what we can do for you." I assigned his car to my best diagnostic technician and had them run a complete check. The problem turned out to be serious but fixable, the result of deferred maintenance and driving habits that prioritized performance over care. When Scott came back for the estimate, I handed him the paperwork with the same professional courtesy I showed every customer. "Your transmission is failing, Scott. It's repairable, but it's going to cost about $4,000. The alternative is replacement, which would run closer to $8,000. $4,000? His voice cracked. "Tyler, come on. We know each other. Can't you work with me on this?" I looked at him calmly. "Scott, I give every customer the same fair price for quality work. I don't overcharge people, and I don't give special discounts based on personal relationships." "Personal relationships?" He laughed bitterly. "Tyler, you ruined my marriage. You turned Lucy against me. The least you can do is help me out with my car." "Scott, I didn't turn Lucy against you. You did that yourself when you decided to lie to her, cheat on her, and treat her like a business investment instead of a wife." He leaned across the counter, lowering his voice. "You know what I think, Tyler. I think you were jealous of what I could give Lucy. I think you couldn't stand that she was moving up in the world, leaving you behind." I smiled, feeling no anger, no hurt, just a kind of amused pity for a man who still didn't understand what had really happened. "Scott, Lucy didn't move up in the world when she married you. She moved sideways, into a world that was shinier but not better. When she left you, that's when she moved up. She moved up to being with people who valued her for who she was, not what she could do for them." "This isn't over, Tyler. Actually, it is. Your car will be ready in 3 days. You can pay when you pick it up. Have a nice day, Scott." As I watched him leave, I realized that Scott's threats no longer had any power over me. Not because I had defeated him, but because I had finally understood that his opinion of me had never mattered in the first place. That evening, I called Lucy to tell her about Scott's visit. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "Honestly, I feel sorry for him. He's still the same person he was 6 months ago, still trying to manipulate and threaten his way through life. But we've changed. We've grown. We've become people who can't be manipulated anymore. Dad, I have news too. David proposed. David was the man Lucy had been dating for the past 2 months. A teacher who had fallen in love with her laugh, her intelligence, and her kindness. Someone who thought our family story was inspiring rather than embarrassing. Lucy, that's wonderful. Are you happy? I'm so happy, Dad. And this time, I know it's real. David loves me exactly as I am. He's excited to have you as a father-in-law. He wants a simple wedding that we can actually afford. And he's already talking about the kids we might have and how lucky they'll be to have you as a grandfather. When's the wedding? We're thinking next spring. Small ceremony, maybe 50 people, right here in town. Dad, will you walk me down the aisle again? I felt my throat tighten with emotion. Lucy, I would be honored. And, Dad, this time, I'm paying for it myself. As we hung up, I sat in my living room, looking around at the house that Scott had called a dump. The life he had called pathetic, the family he had seen as an obstacle to overcome. And I realized that everything he had tried to take from us, everything he had tried to make us ashamed of, was actually everything we had needed to be proud of all along. The next morning, I went to work at a job I loved, in a place where I was respected, building something that would last long after people like Scott had moved on to their next schemes. And for the first time in years, I felt like the man my wife would have wanted me to be, the father Lucy deserved to have, and most importantly, the person I was proud to see in the mirror every day.